Hey guys, Andrew here on behalf of Keys Automation. In this video we're going to do a product description and an install for our Ford 8.8 rear differential kit for the Mazda RX8. Okay, to start this off, the Mazda RX8 changed the front geometry of the rear cross member in 2008. This is a bolt-in front bracket assembly for this differential. This only works 2004 to 2007 cars. If it's 2008 or newer, we would provide you a weld-in bracket assembly, or you could purchase a second-hand 04 to 07 rear cross member and then use the bolt-in bracket. This all comes down to whether or not you've got a welder or you want to drag this to a guy that can weld. If you're putting this in an NC Miata, buy an RX8 crossmember, buy the 04 to 07 rear crossmember, and use this bracket. That's what I would do. You could do the 08 to 11 if you wanted to, and use the welding bracket if you want. I like this better. So that's basically what this differential kit fits in terms of RX8s and NCs and what you need. Now let's get down to the differential itself. The differential we have chosen to use is from the 06 to 2010 Ford Explorers. All rear Ford Explorer diffs. It's IRS, no big heavy solid axle, okay? Why we chose this? Everyone uses these things, and there's a reason why they use these things. You're not going to find a more affordable differential that's as abundant as it is, that's as strong as it is, that dissipates heat as well as it does. You put those four combinations together, and this is what it produces. You're not going to get a better bang for the buck here. You can pick these things up a dime a dozen. From the factory, they came with open diffs or limited slips. They came with 355 and 373 ratio gears. For most of our builds, what I recommend is just buying the cheapest diff you can, because all you're going to reuse is the pumpkin. Pull all the guts out of it, buy a bearing and seal kit, buy a Ford Performance ring and pinion in any ratio you want. They're all there. And then buy the limited slip of your choosing. In terms of limited slips, Ford Performance makes a track lock with carbon clutch discs in it. Eaton makes the True Track, which is a helical diff. If you want to go all out, get an OS Geiken for it. There's so many options for these things. It's incredible. Ring and pinions are dirt cheap. Limited slips are very affordable. Rebuild kits like $110 for absolutely everything you need to rebuild these diffs. So you're just getting a great value, okay? So that is why we use this diff. Another reason we use this diff is because of the just general geometry that Ford designed this thing for. It fits really well with the RX8 crossmember, much better than the 5th gen Camaro diffs, which we were using. And you'll see that more on the install side of things. So now let's get into the actual product and what you're receiving. All right, let's start with the differential cover here. This is a sand cast unit, casted from A356 T6 aluminum. We have got heat sinks built all into this differential cover, help dissipate heat. Polyurethane bushings. Breather on top. It's also covered here. Should never have any oiling problems with oil coming out of the breather. And the inside geometry of this differential cover is very close to OEM. And that's actually very important. You see a lot of companies, they'll make a massive differential cover that holds another quart of fluid. Just because it holds more fluid doesn't mean it's more efficient. Fluid dynamic engineers spend a lot of time getting the curvature of these type of systems working properly in order for the diff fluid to flow fluently. You just put a massive cover on the back of here, it disrupts that, and you will actually lose efficiency out of your diff. So this is very close to OEM geometry. You've got a drain port, a fill port, and an upper port if you so choose to run an oil cooler and pump. The location of this is very critical. I designed it so that the fluid comes back into the differential and lands directly on top of the ring gear, so the ring gear will help it flow around back into the bottom of the diff without disrupting the fluid cycle inside of there. So if you run an oil cooler with this thing, this is going to be your input, and then you're going to use the drain for the output for your pump and for your cooler. You know, that about covers the differential cover itself. I mean, this is just a 100% bolt-on affair. If you want to know how much horsepower this stuff holds, there's far more variables than horsepower when it comes to the strength of cyclic components within the drivetrain. I will say that this cover, this system will outlast a 4-inch aluminum drive shaft with an 1/8-inch wall, and folks run those for years and years and years in 1,000+ horsepower vehicles. So that's all I have to say about that. So for the front mounting assembly, all this aluminum is machined from 6061 T6 aluminum. Got all the mounting hardware you need for this front bracket assembly, and locating dowels. Basically, you'll understand the front bracket far more when we get to the installation. I will say that this bracket assembly and this differential cover allow for incredibly accurate pinion angle and to get that differential sitting in the crossmember exactly how it's supposed to, with basically no way of screwing it up. It is literally foolproof. When you order a differential kit from a company that comes with a bunch of laser cut brackets and your job is to situate everything and weld it properly, that leads to a lot of room for error, and that is something that just does not exist with this kit. So let's get on to the installation at this point. These are the tools needed for the installation: drill bit, impact wrench, 3/8 or 1/2 inch is fine, 13mm wrench, 19mm wrench, 17mm wrench, torque wrench, 13mm socket, 17mm socket, 19mm socket. You're going to want a punch. Fits these holes rather snug. 3/8 drill bit, a little larger or a little smaller, is totally fine. Little hammer, and I like a reamer. You don't have to have this. It's nice to clean up the holes after drilling though. Okay, so actually the first step here is to install the differential cover onto the differential. We supply you the 10 fasteners. If you bought a rebuild kit for this differential, you have a new gasket for it here. If not, you can use RTV against the surface as well, but obviously don't put metal against metal without RTV or a gasket. Torque these fasteners to 20 foot-pounds. Then your next step is going to be to manhandle this differential into place. I like to lean the crossmember back to this angle. It'll rest here by itself. It's not held with anything. And then just come in here, wait. Mazda fasteners for the differential. You want to have these handy while you're doing this. Okay, now back to it. I'm going to take this differential. Having two people makes this much easier. I'll usually slide it in here into place. I'll take this right here. I'll get it to about right here. Get one hand under it. Got a bolt in one hand. When it's started, position the other one into place. That one started. I've actually threaded that one in. Now that one is started to thread in. So at this point, I will tilt the cross member back down to its resting position. And then I'll take my 17 wrench and I'll thread these in, but I'm not going to torque them down yet or anything. You can apply some torque to them, but by no means there's no point in getting them very tight at this point in our installation. Alright, differential cover, or differential is secured. Okay, step 3 is going to be to get this cross member elevated up in the front. You can see I've used these 4x4s under the front of it. That's to allow this differential to sag down far enough and so you can secure your bolts through the bottom side. So what I've done here is I've disassembled the front mount. I've got the 2 bolts, 2 spacers, front mount assembly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this, slide it up in here. I'm going to pull these together. Okay, hopefully it'll stay. There's enough tension on those dowel pins to that thing will just float right there. I'm going to take these, put those up into position. I'm going to take a bolt, well, of course, and I'm going to get it threaded up into that hole. Just like so. I'm going to do the other one. Just like so. Now make sure you do this with your hands so you don't cross the thread. And then once you know they're started, take your wrench. Oh, it's a 19. Take your wrench. And you don't have to tighten these by any means, but you definitely want to get a few threads up in there on each one. Like so. Now, you want to take some kind of little block or spacer and wedge underneath this diff until this whole assembly slides up enough that these 2 dowel pins hit the cross member. And I'm going to take this off so you can see reference here. You want these 2 dowel pins to go up and touch the cross member. So I'm going to push up on here and wedge this thing in here where it stays. So this front mount is 100% in the correct position right now. So now we're going to slide this on. Your next step is going to be to center punch all 7 of these holes. So I like to hold on to the back of the cross member and get it a really firm hit. I'll rest my arm against it. Look right there. You want a good hit to deform that metal. Then you just walk down the line. Do all 7 of them. Then from there, you want to completely remove this assembly. Oh, I need this on there. Well, get them out by hand pretty easy. I'll just do one first. Get that out of the way. Alright, now with the assembly out of the way, we're going to through drill these 7 holes using the drill bit and our center punch holes. Whoops. Torque on it here. after drilling the holes, I like to just get the holes nice and smooth with a reamer. I'll do the inside of the hole and the outside. If you're worried about rust in your area, you can place a little RTV around the mating surfaces of the components. So when the sandwiches together, this raw metal is sealed with RTV. Okay, in order to keep this video as short as possible and not bore you all to death, I've went and reinstalled this front assembly identical to how we did it the first time. Remember to keep a block under here so these dowel pins reside against the cross member to keep everything nice, tight, and secure. At this point, we're going to install the fasteners into here. Whether you do it by hand or with a tool of some sort, make sure to be careful and not cross thread any of these bolts. And also, just keep these things a little loose while you're installing all of them. That way, if the assembly needs to shift a little bit, it has the freedom to do so. These two on the end, use a nut on the back side. Just put those into place. I'm holding the nut back here. And go to this side and do the same thing. And at that point, you can go ahead and snug these down a little bit. Now, the final torquing on all of these bolts will be 20 foot-pounds. The final torque on these bolts will be 80 foot-pounds. And the final torque on the two OEM bolts going through the cross member is also 80 pounds. So 80, 80, 20. So that wraps up the installation portion of this video. And I guess to conclude, this is a 100% bolt-in kit. It should take you less than an hour to install, probably closer to 30 minutes for most technicians. All you need is a drill bit. Look out for our video in the future regarding our high horsepower bolt-in CV axles for this differential and cross member. If you'd like to order this kit, www.keyslerautomation.com, and thank you for watching.